This is a story of power. This hushed and sunlit room, the president's office, is its inner sanctum. At the end of the ganglia of wires that run from this console quivers the power of America, from thermonuclear striking force to missiles in the deep. Whoever in lonely responsibility must press one of these buttons does so for all the American people. When he moves to create or destroy, he speaks his conscience and theirs, for they have freely chosen him. In the 172nd year of their republic, the American people sought to give this responsibility to a new leader in that rowdy transaction of passion, tumult, and circus called a presidential campaign.
The people of the United States in this last week have finally caught up with the promises that have been made by our opponents. They realize that it's a modern medicine man show, a Pied Piper from Boston, and they're not going to go down that road.
I run against a candidate who reminds me of the symbol of his party, the circus elephant, his head full of ivory, a long memory and no vision, and you have seen elephants being led around the circus ring. They grab the tail of the elephant in front of them.
It was invisible as always. High in the hills of New Hampshire, as the clock passed midnight, the citizens of Hart's location gathered to fit together the first fragments of the mystery. Before the clock came round again, 68 million other Americans would join these first 12 voters to give the answer. By dawn tomorrow, America's power would pass to new leadership. Yet who it was to be, no man could say. It was 8:40 that morning when the candidate arrived at the West End branch of the Boston Public Library to cast his vote. Here in the 11th Congressional District, where he had won his first political victory, he signed in the basement of the library, John F. Kennedy, 122 Bowdoin Street. His education for power had begun 43 years ago. Born in the First World War in a gentle suburb of Boston, schooled at New England's finest halls, he had as a Harvard junior visited England and watched, with his father the ambassador, the decay of English power as Munich approached. Then tasted war himself in the far Pacific. Peace had brought him back to Boston politics, to the United States Senate in '52. Peace had graced him with a new bride, led him to an examination of history and heroes in a prize-winning book. Spectacular re-election to the Senate urged him on to the presidency. Now, home again, after 2 years' pursuit of ultimate power, he must wait the judgment of his fellow countrymen. Far across the continent, his rival too had returned home. Whittier, California was crowded now with the curious, gathering to see Richard Nixon cast his vote in Precinct 33. In this quiet town, a Quaker village, he had been born 47 years ago. He returned now as Vice President of the United States. A sensitive lad, a good student, Dick Nixon had gone from Whittier schools to Duke University, then off to war in the Pacific, then home again to run for Congress. A buried pumpkin, Alger Hiss, a strip of hidden microfilm, combined to make young Congressman Nixon famous, led him to the Senate in 1950, sped him to nomination for second highest post in the land under Dwight D. Eisenhower. As Eisenhower's heir apparent, Nixon traveled the globe, debated with Nikita Khrushchev in Moscow. Nixon offered Americans experience and the magic stamp of legitimacy. For Nixon, this was the end of a long road. A road whose tributaries begin in the secret places of men's hope and ambition, long before it descends to public view in the pageantry of open politics. A road that invites men on into history and immortality. It was a crowded road in the fall of 1959, as political leaders examined 7 men in whose dreams might shimmer the tall pillars of the White House. On the Democratic side were 5 candidates. Stuart Symington of Missouri, national defense specialist, was the politician's favorite. Yet many waited for word from inscrutable Adai Stevenson, most distinguished of Democrats, but a two-time loser. Certainly Lyndon Johnson, Master of Congress, would run, but the Southerner had no big city appeal. Hubert Humphry was going, but could he transfer his Minnesota power to other states? Finally, John Kennedy of Massachusetts. Brilliant, glamorous, but young. Among Republicans, newcomer Nelson Rockefeller, a smashing vote-getter. But was he too new, too rich, too liberal? And of course, Richard Nixon. Each man's life had already long since been reshaped by presidential ambition. But to speak such yearning too early is forbidden by the code of American politics.
I still believe that it's too early to make a decision with regard to 1960.
Why have you chosen to become the first announced candidate?
I have made no announcement.
I'm not a candidate for the presidency of the United States.
You said many times you're not a candidate, but so would you accept this
Would you wish me to say it again?
The senator from Massachusetts referred to you as an aspirant for the presidential nomination, are you?
That's the senator's statement, not mine. Informed sources have said you'll make your decision by November.
I have no schedule. I've made a decision at the present time that I'm not a candidate.
These matters which so occupy the attention of those in political life really are not matters of general concern until the primaries finally come.
Yet finally, politics must be brought into the open. The Republicans hold the White House. In midwinter, two Democrats, Hubert Humphry and John Kennedy, announced their claim. Kennedy is off first to an uncontested primary victory in New Hampshire. But his mortal battleground will be those spring primaries where Humphry challenges him. No other way to nomination is open for either man. Next July, the Democratic Convention will choose the candidate. But Humphry and Kennedy fear that the big city bosses may cut their hearts out in convention back rooms. Kennedy because they think a Catholic must lose. Humphry because they think him too liberal. So these candidates must now appeal to the people. And their first clash comes in the Wisconsin primaries. Here on the winding roads of the Badger State, Kennedy, a stranger from Boston in cold prairie country, must joust with Humphry to political death. Lonely as a stick on the street corners of chill Wisconsin, Kennedy reaches for hands to shake, hearts to win, and for votes. Votes are power. Only factory gate grassroots votes delivered at primaries will give either Kennedy or Humphry the strength to buck the bosses at convention and win the nomination. For Humphry as for Kennedy, the same grueling tasks wait. Everywhere his bus stops, Humphry calls on his Midwestern neighbors of Wisconsin to reject this elegant stranger, the Bay State Senator. From over the borders of his home state, Minnesota, come weekend volunteers for his modest headquarters, serving his cause with earnest, folksy zeal, passing out cards that give Muriel Humphrey's recipe for black bean soup.
It's been Mrs. Humphry and myself. You see, I sort of feel like an independent merchant competing against a chain store when I compete with the Kennedy family.
From a large, well-staffed headquarters in downtown Milwaukee, Kennedy workers efficiently divide Wisconsin into its 10 convention districts. They are trying for a knockout, a victory that'll entirely eliminate Humphry. Bobby Kennedy directs the most skillful team of political operators since James Farley captained Franklin Roosevelt's troops. The Kennedy women arrive. First Ethel, then the senator's sisters, then his wife too adds her efforts. Now in the streets as the end draws near, the crowds begin to grow. Elation mounts, and Kennedy men predict victory by 7 districts to 3, then 8 to 2, then 9 to 1. By election morning, as Democrats vote in the Wisconsin primary, some even predict a clean sweep, all 10.
Kennedy, of course, is a Roman Catholic, Humphry a Congregationalist, and some observers think that the election has resolved into a religious struggle.
Listening to these words on the radio in his third-floor suite at Milwaukee's Pfister Hotel, studying the shape of the vote, Kennedy knows early in the evening, first, that he has scored no knockout. Secondly, that politicians everywhere will see the vote as a reflection of religious cleavage.
saying that Humphrey possibly may carry 5 districts. The chances of a Kennedy sweep have almost slipped away. One of the most elaborate campaigns in the state's history could wind up meaning almost nothing.
What is happening is now clear. The industrial cities with their Catholic working men are giving the Massachusetts senator a decisive margin. But the 3 westernmost districts of Wisconsin, agricultural and Protestant, are voting heavily for Humphry.
With a popular vote. And that would end up with 20.5 to 10.5.
Humphrey 161,728. In the 7th district, which was the one we were particularly...
How's that running?
Well, you're ahead.
Humphrey is leading now in the popular vote, but Kennedy appears to be closing the gap.
For Kennedy, this is a victory without joy. Though he wins 6 districts to 4, he still has not proven his vote-getting ability in Protestant districts. In a Milwaukee television studio, Humphrey is as cheerful as Kennedy is downcast. Humphrey has expected a trouncing. This upset is almost a victory for him. Exuberantly, he prepares for the next round, the West Virginia primary. Kennedy men feel otherwise, that Humphrey, having lost in Wisconsin, has lost all and now should quit. As he flies to West Virginia, Kennedy must face the moment of truth. He must prove that religion alone will not decide elections in America, and he must do it in a state whose people are 95% Protestant. If he loses there, he loses all, and the 1960 convention will choose a candidate in the back rooms. As Kennedy arrives to take command in Charleston, West Virginia, he finds his organization already installed and fresh reserves arriving from New England. Bobby Kennedy goads the team into high. Pollster Lou Harris arrives to probe the tides of prejudice. Direct from Wisconsin to marshal the field workers has come Larry O'Brien, and Press Chief Salinger is now on a 20-hour day. Against such formidable opposition, Humphrey's major problem grows more acute every day.
It doesn't make you feel very happy when the man walks into your room at 5:30 in the morning and says, "Senator, we're in debt $18,000 and we have no more money for anything. No money for television, no money for printing." I say, "Where are the buttons? We have no money." So I say, "All right, we'll just knock off the whole day, cancel out the program, and we'll get on this telephone. I'll call my friends in Minnesota. We'll call them in New York. We'll call them in Washington. We've got to raise the money."
From beginning to end, Humphrey's campaign echoes America of another day, of the old populists, of the warm, visionary early New Deal. He was the poor man's candidate. And in West Virginia, with its thousands of unemployed miners, Humphrey hoped for a response.
Humphrey is a senator, a neighbor, a friend. We're going to stick with him all the way to the end. He used to come over just to help us out. It's our turn to help him without any doubt. So vote for Hubert. Hubert Humphry, the president for you and me.
Kennedy's problem is religion. The 2 elegant Kennedys, with their polished East Coast accents, their grace of dress and bearing, seem alien in West Virginia. But nothing seems more alien than their Catholic faith in this overwhelmingly Protestant state. Staff planners debate the problem. Finally, acting with his closest advisor, Ted Sorensen, Kennedy decides to bring the issue into the open. There is no test of faith or religion when a man is summoned to die for his country. Why should there be a test of faith when he tries to serve it in peace? So speaks Kennedy. But no one can read from the intent faces of the West Virginians whether this plea reaches their heart. On May 10th, West Virginia votes. It will be late before the ballots give the answer. A Kennedy sweep by 60-40. The walls of prejudice have fallen. At 1 o'clock at his headquarters, Humphrey speaks for the last time as candidate.
Now, I am no longer a candidate for the Democratic presidential nomination. I shall run for re-election to the United States Senate from the state of Minnesota. I shall do whatever I can, however, to make sure that the Democratic Convention will adopt a liberal platform and nominate liberal candidates who will be elected in November. And to that end, I shall be in constant contact with my friends in Minnesota and throughout the country. That's my statement. to thank all of you, too. You've been very good people.
May we ask a question, Senator?
No, that's all. Thank you.
I'm gonna vote for Hubert Humphry. I'm gonna vote for Hubert Humphry. I'm gonna vote for Hubert Humphry. He's the man for you and me. He'll make everybody happy. He'll make everybody happy. Hey, Jimmy.
First man out in the 1960 sweepstakes, Humphrey leaves a glow of devotion in all who followed him. But presidential politics have little time for losers. The weeks following his victory, Kennedy, like all candidates, devotes to good old-fashioned politicking with big city eastern bosses. To Pennsylvania to powwow with grizzled Governor Lawrence. To Chicago and Dick Daley, boss of Cook County. To New York and Bob Wagner at Gracie Mansion. To New Jersey and Governor Robert Minor. To Michigan and friendly Soapy Williams. The primaries have won him delegates. More than that, they have won him the prestige to turn to these northern power brokers and demand the great blocks of delegates they control at convention. Yet American destiny is moved by more than grassroots politics. 12,000 miles away, an American U-2 is brought down over Russian soil, and Khrushchev's short temper snaps. The summit conference of 1960 explodes with his tirade against America.
И будете опять готовить нападение, мы так ухнем, что больше не будешь ухать.
The outer world in these spring weeks seethes with violent threats. Africa is liberated. The Congo approaches self-government. And as the world is jolted with spurting new tensions, the Democratic Party re-examines its youthful front-runner. At the end of June, Harry Truman puts the question directly to Jack Kennedy.
I want to say to him at this time, and I quote a statement to Senator Kennedy, Senator, are you certain that you're quite ready for the country, or the country is ready for you, in the role of president in January 1961?
In these turbulent weeks, Democrats seek in other candidates experience and maturity. Their campaigns boom. Truman's choice for candidate is fellow Missourian, Stuart Symington.
You think you're going to beat Jack Kennedy and everybody else?
I think I'm going to win in July, that's right.
But thousands of other Democrats turn almost by instinct to the party's most eloquent spokesman on foreign affairs, Adai Stevenson.
Well, you know, Chairman Butler this afternoon recognized you as a candidate, and he said that your people, at least, are going to be allowed to have office space in the Biltmore Hotel. Does this change your feeling?
Well, I hadn't heard about that. That's news to me. My people are going to have office space in the Biltmore?
That's right.
Well, I didn't even know I had any people until I got to Washington this afternoon. Anyway, bless all my people.
Hitherto, Lyndon Johnson's campaign had been a mixture of country music and congressional maneuver. Now, Johnson counts on his record as seasoned majority leader of the Senate to give him the image of leader for a time of crisis.
Senator Kennedy, with the convention just less than 2 weeks away, how do things look for you?
Well, I think it's coming along very well, I hope.
But the nomination, which had seemed close enough for Kennedy to touch in May, is to be a matter of bitter contest in Los Angeles in July. Los Angeles glistens as starting July 4th weekend, delegates, alternates, candidates, hopefuls, wheeler-dealers stream in. The sports arena waits for the Democratic convention. But at the Biltmore Hotel downtown, the real business, politicking, has already begun. 761 is the magic number. 761 votes needed to nominate. To lure or snare wavering delegates, headquarters have been opened by each candidate. Symington hopes he'll win as compromise candidate in a deadlock. Lyndon Johnson has a solid block of 400 Southern delegates, but little support from elsewhere. 9 miles away, Adai Stevenson on convention eve still refuses to ask a single delegate's vote. But Stevenson has tremendous emotional support in the party. His followers hope that Johnson leaders will add their delegate strength to a Stop Kennedy movement that will halt Kennedy on the first ballot and rip him apart on later ballots. As front runner, Kennedy is the target of every whisper, rumor, counterplan of his rivals. Yet, in the noise and babble, Suite 8315 at the Biltmore, the Kennedy command post, remains serene. Someone calls this convention the changing of the guard. A new generation is replacing the old. The battle-tested veterans behind these doors are almost all in their 30s. Unflustered, they direct the Kennedy organization in a round-the-clock effort. Great national conventions always break up into small meetings of state, regional, and special interest groups. All these meetings are stirred by a simple purpose: to find the leader the party can offer the nation and win. As caucuses seek a man, the candidates seek out caucuses, addressing 10, 20 groups a day. Entering the last intense weekend of caucusing before convention, Kennedy feels reasonably certain of 600 votes. 3 key states can add the votes needed for nomination, but Illinois, Pennsylvania, and California have not yet made up their minds. Kennedy efforts will concentrate on these. The Kennedys have courted Dick Daley all year. He controls Illinois' 69 votes. On Sunday, he caucuses Illinois behind closed doors, and it breaks 59 for Kennedy. Monday, Kennedy pleads for Pennsylvania votes. By noon, Governor Lawrence announces 64 out of 81 for Kennedy. The bandwagon rolls as the convention officially opens that evening.
Will the delegates please take their seats in their own delegation chairs?
Up to now, it's been Kennedy all the way, and his count has passed 700 delegates, only 60-odd shy of nomination.
Is now called in session. I have the honor and the proud privilege
Suddenly, Stevenson planners explode a surprise. They have flung a chain of wild enthusiasts around the arena. They hope they can trigger a stampede to halt Kennedy. Next day, Tuesday, Kennedy meets Johnson before a joint meeting of the Texas and Massachusetts delegations. All other caucuses pause to watch as the majority leader contrasts his working record in the Senate with that of his campaigning rival.
For 6 days and nights, we had 24-hour sessions. 6 days and nights, I had to deliver a quorum of 51 men on a moment's notice to keep the Senate in session to get any bill at all. And I'm proud to tell you that on those 50 quorum calls, Lyndon Johnson answered every one of them. Although some men who would be president on a civil rights platform answered none. Admittedly, I didn't have the problem that some of my people had of opposing Senator Humphrey and Morse in 4 primaries.
Senator Johnson, let me just say that I appreciate what Senator Johnson had to say. He made some general references to perhaps the shortcomings of other presidential candidates, but as he was not specific, I assume he was talking about some of the other candidates and not about me.
It is true that Senator Johnson made a wonderful record in answering those quorum calls, and I want to commend him for it. I was not present on all those occasions. I was not majority leader. As Lyndon knows, I never criticized. In fact, on every occasion, I said that I thought Senator Johnson should not enter the primaries, that his proper responsibility was as majority leader, and that if he would let Hubert, Wayne, and I settle this matter, we could come to a clear-cut decision. So I come to you today full of admiration for Senator Johnson, full of affection for him, strongly in support of him for majority leader, and I'm confident that in that position, we're all going to be able to work together. Thank you.
That Tuesday afternoon, Stevenson comes to the convention. He finds the contagious excitement of his volunteers sweeping the delegates on the floor.
As well as up the delegates. I'll find out in just a moment now what the cause of this excitement is and pass the word on to you.
The reservoir of affection for him floods over. A tumult rocks the delegates. They know this pressure cracked the California delegation today when 33 California votes broke to Stevenson. Can Adai be drafted? Many delegates waver. Should they hold back from Kennedy and wait for Stevenson's call?
After getting in and out of the Biltmore Hotel in this hall, I've decided that I know who you're going to nominate. It will be the last survivor.
Tuesday night's paper screen. Setback hits Kennedy, and Lyndon Johnson savors the headlines. The next day, Wednesday, Stevenson volunteers circle the arena again. They flood the gates, pack the galleries, prepare to stampede the convention. Nominations begin when Sam Rayburn offers Johnson's name.
I present to you a man who has demonstrated that under adverse
During
circumstances...
4 hours of nominations and demonstrations, the final struggle for votes goes on. Bobby Kennedy and Abe Ribicoff, the Kennedy floor leaders, command 40 floor workers by a net of 8 direct telephones and high-powered walkie-talkies. Squirming among the delegates, they plead, urge, cajole for individual votes. They must pick up 20-odd votes for their man. Finally, the calling of the roll begins.
Alabama cast. Johnson, 20 votes. Kennedy, 3.5.
Johnson listens from the Biltmore. Alabama, a southern state, gives him first lead. As the roll continues, Stevenson finds that for all his emotional support, nothing shows in hard votes.
Massachusetts cast 41 votes. John F. Kennedy.
In the secret hideaway, Kennedy marks his own tally sheet. The big city states are coming in as planned. Even New York, where a reported Stevenson revolt fizzles.
Senator Kennedy, 104.5.
Bobby has told his men that if the 700 mark is passed when the state of Washington votes, they can win. That mark is reached. Next, West Virginia and Wisconsin, both safe, won in the primaries. Wyoming can give them 763 in victory. Teddy Kennedy rushes to Wyoming.
Wyoming's vote will make majority for Senator Kennedy.
Screaming police escort, Kennedy speeds from his hideaway to the arena. Outside, governors, mayors, senators, bosses gather to form a protective escort for the young new leader. Tomorrow, in an all-day tussle, he must choose a vice president. But tonight is for jubilation. He now commands all the machinery of the National Democratic Party. These aging chieftains must march to his direction. He is halfway down the road.
It is not possible for me to give you an answer to your nomination until Friday night, but I think you can guess what the answer will be.
In Washington, Vice President Nixon, apparently certain of nomination, is disturbed in June by rumblings in his own party. As the Republican convention approaches, Nixon's chief concern is the man he wanted as vice president, but who spurned him, Nelson Rockefeller. Rockefeller, attacking Republican leadership, wants much greater effort in national defense, bolder foreign policies, advanced civil rights. his demands provoke deep resentments. A clash looms between liberal and conservative Republicans, and Chicago will be the arena. The Windy City, most famous convention gathering place in American history, prepares for the 2,600 Republican delegates and alternates with its usual efficiency, precaution, and pretty girls. Already at early hearings to set the party platform, fighting breaks out. Rockefeller people press for a bold program. Conservative Republicans hold back. Platform Chairman Charles Percy tries to compromise between the two wings, but fails. Rockefeller staff men at the Sheraton Towers Hotel, deadlocked in the platform committee, are willing to risk an open clash over national defense and civil rights that can rip the party apart. Friday, they receive Rockefeller's permission to threaten open floor fight. That afternoon in New York, Rockefeller will get a telephone call from Washington. Nixon wants to fly to New York privately and visit him. Rockefeller will agree. An hour's flight will bring the vice president from Washington to New York. Nixon must head off a conflict in which Republicans will denounce each other. This could only serve Kennedy. Driving into the city, Nixon faces a dilemma. Can Rockefeller's platform demands be satisfied without upsetting the grassroots Republicans in Chicago, who remain unaware of this secret rendezvous? He will arrive at Rockefeller's home, 810 Fifth Avenue, at 7:30 of a summer evening. Over dinner for an hour and a half in the triplex apartment, Nixon will urge Rockefeller to be his vice president. Rockefeller will refuse. They will then go on to discuss the platform. Hours later, when they work out an agreement, they will telephone Chairman Percy in Chicago. Below them in the dark, the lights prick out the twinkling vistas of New York's Central Park. For 3 hours, by long-distance phone, Rockefeller and Nixon will tell the platform chairman what they decided here. Shortly after 3, Nixon will leave to return to Washington. By morning, the newspapers have the story, and Nixon confirms it.
But on the great issues of national security, of foreign policy, and domestic policy, we found basic agreement, which was expressed in the statement that the governor released in New York after I had approved it.
In Chicago, the news reaches the platform writers. Their indignation boils over at this apparent dictation by 2 absentee leaders. Senator Barry Goldwater voices their anger.
The unprecedented last-minute attempt to impose upon the Republican Platform Committee platform provisions from a point 1,000 miles away from the convention has caused deep concern on the part of conscientious Republicans attending the convention at Chicago. A great many working Republicans here in Chicago as delegates to this convention are now asking, did we come to Chicago to nominate a candidate for the presidency, or is our first concern to tailor our entire platform and adjust our historic principles in order to accommodate the conditions laid down by Governor Rockefeller as prerequisite to his becoming a candidate for the vice presidency?
I think it's a surrender to Rockefeller.
Richard and Pat Nixon arrive in Chicago Monday morning, July 27th, opening day of the convention, and are met by cheering partisans. But these ringing cheers cannot solve the problem of angry delegates who feel themselves humiliated. Nixon must go before the platform committee and plead for party harmony.
What is a party platform? Well, it's something when you build it that can't be so narrow that just a very few can get on it, because then you aren't going to have a two-party system in this country. You're going to have fragmentized party with everybody having his own little platform with the very few people that he thinks agrees with him on everything. I have heard some people say, if I don't get what I want on this civil rights thing or on this health thing or the rest, I'm going to go home and I'm going to sit it out. Or if I don't get what I want, I just got to go vote for the Democrats. And my point is this: how stupid can you be? If the Democrats in Los Angeles, with the differences that they have between the 2 Democratic parties, or 3, however the case may be, if with the differences that they have, and if after what Johnson said about Kennedy and Kennedy said about Johnson, those 2 could get together, then certainly we Republicans can all get together on our candidate on our platform.
Nixon is at his best in Chicago. In a supreme effort, he lobbies leaders and delegates with his message. They must preserve party unity. He both charms and compels support. By Tuesday, the revolt is over, a compromise platform accepted. Wednesday is Happiness Day for Republicans. The smiling lion of the party, Dwight D. Eisenhower, arrives. Ike's power comes from the heart and love of common people, and the streets are choked to see him. This is the greatest living vote-getter. There is no doubt whom the Republicans will now nominate. But nonetheless, Wednesday evening, every delegate is in place to cheer the announcement from the podium.
Therefore, that Vice President Richard M. Nixon has been unanimously nominated to be the candidate of the Republican Party for the office of President of the United States.
The next day, Thursday, is all Richard M. Nixon's.
He is the man who will succeed Dwight D. Eisenhower next January. Richard A. Nixon.
Normally an off-the-cuff orator, Nixon has prepared his acceptance speech thoughtfully, and many will think it his best effort of the year.
I can only say tonight to you that I believe in the American dream because I have seen it come true in my own life.
When Mr. Khrushchev says our grandchildren will live under communism, let us say his grandchildren will live in freedom. And I pledge to you that I personally will carry this campaign into every one of the 50 states of this nation between now and November 8th.
This unprecedented pledge of a 50-state campaign will later bind Nixon to its performance. He then concludes,
with faith in America, with faith in her ideals, and in her people, I accept your nomination for President of the United States.
And now Richard M. Nixon, like John F. Kennedy, is halfway down the road. Only two are left. Only one can win. While the candidates plan, a new census counts the nation. Americans number over 180 million. Spectacular growth. Marked on cards, sorted, sifted, analyzed by computers, the figures floodlight past decades. Nixon and Kennedy now have a precise new picture of the past. How they read it for the future is what counts. The great cities of America, says the census, are shrinking. Americans are moving to suburbia. 2/3 of all the growth has been there. Information vital to political planners. The spinning figures trace still another movement. 18 million American Negroes, 1/10 of the nation, are on the move. 50 years ago, 90% lived in the Old South. The new census says half now live north and west, and mostly in the big cities of the major states, where their votes are critical. Such movements can be registered. Others cannot be. Politics are affected by the differing ways Americans choose to worship. 1/4 of the country is Catholic, the rest mostly of Protestant origin. Both candidates believe such differences should not influence votes, but they must plan realistically to neutralize prejudice. Each digit is an individual American with an individual past. Both candidates must try to reach the individual in the mass and turn him from the past to face the future. Nixon, with running mate Henry Cabot Lodge and his staff, plan a campaign that will amble through August, speed up in September, concentrate on 7 big states, then peak in an all-out effort just before election. They begin by consulting with President Eisenhower. Ike makes it clear he'll give all help asked, but that Nixon is free to run his own campaign his own way. The president will make 3 television appearances. He is ready to do more, but no further requests are now made. At Hyannisport, Kennedy rests and plays while the Republican convention holds national attention. This is a moment of sun, sail, and family. A moment of cool pause before plunging on to the scorching climax of electoral clash. His summer cottage now becomes a national headquarters. Chief of Central Intelligence, Allen Dulles, comes to brief Kennedy on those secrets of American foreign affairs that must be kept out of partisan politics. He also receives a visit from Lyndon Johnson, now his vice presidential partner, to shape political strategy. Johnson must win the South. Kennedy will try for the big states of the Northeast and California. The Kennedys' theory of pacing differs from Nixon's. They believe in starting early, running hard all the way, then running harder than ever at the end. Before they can start, Kennedy must return to Washington, where a dreary summer session of the Senate traps him in attendance. Impatiently, Kennedy and his staff make the best use of these tedious Washington days in planning. It is also a good time to patch party feuds.
Mr. President, Phil Potter of Baltimore Sun, what caused you to decide that Senator Kennedy was ready for the country?
When the Democratic National Convention decided to nominate him for president, that's all the answer you need. The National Democratic Convention is the law for the Democratic Party. And I'm a Democrat, and I follow the law.
Streaking home to California, Nixon is free in early August to be first candidate off the mark. Overnight across the broad Pacific to Hawaii, Nixon sets the jet pace of the 1960 campaign. These August days are marked for Nixon by two episodes. The first, a nasty crack on his knee in an automobile cavalcade, which he ignores. The second, his foray into the Deep South. He decides to be the first Republican candidate ever to visit Atlanta, Georgia. To his delight and surprise, the Georgians throng the streets in a fantastic demonstration. Republicans realize that the solid Democratic South may be a myth of yesteryear. But at the end of August, Nixon lies in Walter Reed Hospital. His injured knee has become dangerously infected. Bedridden, he must replan schedules, crowding the days ahead to the utmost, hoping to keep his 50-state pledge. Well-wishers, including Eisenhower, come to cheer him up. Yet the 2 weeks' time lost is irreplaceable. An impatient Kennedy is freed when the Senate finally closes on September 1st. Now he sprints to overtake Nixon's summer travels. But this is not barnstorming in the primaries. These are the finals. This is for history. Kennedy gropes for the phrases to tongue his urgency, to trumpet his call to the nation. A special train carries his party through the golden valleys of California. To the click of its wheels on the tracks, he begins to find the phrases of his theme, soon to be familiar.
And I'm not satisfied as an American to see us stand still while other countries move ahead. I think it's up to us to grasp the future, to recognize the responsibility that we have in our own generation to move ahead.
As he continues triumphantly through California, he hears of murmurings back east that disturb him. His religious views are again being questioned. He decides to meet the issue head-on by accepting an invitation to speak in Texas. Flying there, he prepares to make his climactic statement on religion before the Greater Houston Ministerial Association on September 12th.
Let me stress again that these are my views. For contrary to common newspaper usage, I am not the Catholic candidate for president. I am the Democratic Party's candidate for president, who happens also to be a Catholic. I do not speak for my church on public matters, and the church does not speak for me. If I should lose on the real issues, I shall return to my seat in the Senate, satisfied that I tried my best and was fairly judged. But if this election is decided on the basis that 40 million Americans lost their chance of being president on the day they were baptized, then it is the whole nation that will be the loser in the eyes of Catholics and non-Catholics around the world, in the eyes of history, and in the eyes of our own people.
Now it's Nixon's turn to catch up. A jet sweeps him out of Washington the same day Kennedy speaks in Houston, and Nixon tries to gobble the continent in a single week. From Baltimore to Dallas and San Francisco, from Portland to Boise, Grand Forks, Peoria, St. Louis, Atlantic City, Roanoke, and Omaha. From Omaha to Council Bluffs, Red Oak, Des Moines, Sioux City, On and on he campaigns in this frenzied first week, driving himself from dawn to dusk. Scarcely recovered from his sickbed, he catches a cold, runs a fever which he valiantly disguises, but keeps right on. Nixon, too, has a theme which simplifies the message he is trying to press into the emotions and votes of Americans.
There is one issue that Americans are thinking about as they vote for president and vice president. Whatever part of the country they come from, whatever group that they may be a part of, there is one issue that they're thinking above everything else. And that is, which of the two candidates for the presidency, which of the two candidates for the vice presidency can best give America and the free world the leadership that will keep the peace without surrender and extend freedom throughout the world.
This is the signature in the sky of a revolution. A revolution Americans call television. 10 years ago, only 4 million homes had television. Now it reaches into 44 million homes. It is about to show its blast effect on politics. Congress has made possible direct TV debate by presidential candidates for the first time. And Chicago will be the scene of the first great debate.
I just want to see if the position of the left turn is right. Will you take count of two, please, Roger?
In the studio, producer Don Hewitt prepares for the arrival of Nixon and Kennedy. Representatives of the candidates inspect and approve each detail of preparation, down to the shade of gray in the painting of the set. Vice President Nixon is the first to arrive. He has campaigned right through this morning and paused only this afternoon for solitary rest, without staff or entourage in a hotel room. Now he listens while the rules of TV debate are explained.
Agreeable. I think you just both should stand here. Is that right? Right. Good. Excellent.
Right. Oh, and incidentally, yes, I think what Howard will actually say is the first question now to Senator Kennedy. You may not want to get up till he's finished. Then once you've got enough to comment on it, then you're up for the rest of the... And Howard will hit the gavel if somebody ignores it.
What is the cut? The cut means that's it.
Get out, Grace.
5 seconds. Right? No, what I mean is you want to quit quickly, or how
yes.
how
well,
much?
We figure when you see 30 seconds,
then try to bring it. All right.
And then the cut is, that's it. And then Howard will give you a few seconds over the cut, and then bang,
yeah, I
bang.
understand. Sure, sure. Well, we'll try it.
Now, David, will you hit the 1 minute switch, please?
You hear me now, speaking? Is that about the right tone of voice? It is a pleasure to be here tonight and to participate in this program, which opens up a series of discussions, sometimes known as great debates.
Good evening. The television and radio stations of the United States and their affiliated stations are proud to provide facilities for a discussion of issues in the current political campaign by the two major candidates for the presidency. The Republican candidate, Vice President Richard M. Nixon, and the Democratic candidate, Senator John F. Kennedy. In this, the first discussion...
The audience for this debate is almost too huge to measure. This is the first of 4. Researchers will claim each debate caught the attention of almost 70 million Americans.
Mr. Smith, Mr. Nixon, in the election of 1860, Abraham Lincoln said the question was whether this nation could exist half slave or half free. In the election of 1960, and with the world around us, the question is whether the world will exist half slave or half free.
The subject of this debate is domestic affairs. Kennedy has spent a relaxing day at the Ambassador East Hotel with his brain trusters, preparing as if for a college exam. Kennedy directs himself not so much to Nixon as to the unseen audiences of the nation. Nixon, however, in debater style, addresses himself chiefly to Kennedy.
Smith, Senator Kennedy, the things that Senator Kennedy has said, many of us can agree with. There is no question but that we cannot discuss our internal affairs in the United States.
The Nixon campaign has stressed his superior maturity and experience. But face to face, the two men seem evenly matched. With this debate, the Nixon claim is shaken. Moreover, ill at ease, under strain, dressed in a suit of gray that blends into the background, Nixon in this first debate leaves a disappointing image in the minds of millions of Americans. For years, men will argue who won or lost the debate. But political analysts will agree that these TV debates were the most important single episode of the campaign.
I've been asked by the candidates to thank the American networks and the affiliated stations for providing time and facilities.
Overnight, TV has given Kennedy star quality. Public response soars. Friday afternoon, October 13th, and the Pirates win the World Series as Bill Mazeroski clouts a ninth-inning homer. Now, by the folklore of politicians, nothing can distract the nation's attention from the presidential finale. As October beckons to cold November, Nixon campaigns with his wife by train through the Republican Midwest. His staff is scheduling him more sensibly than in the first tormenting stanzas of his cross-country dash. In this friendly region, he begins to bring his campaign to peak as planned. And as Nixon develops his gloves-off style, the final election round begins to sizzle.
This is what he said. He said, I am tired of reading in the paper what Mr. Khrushchev is doing. I am tired of reading in the paper what Mr. Castro is doing. He says, I want to be able to read in the paper what the President of the United States is doing. Well, just let me say this. If he had stopped talking and started reading, he'd find out what President Eisenhower is doing.
I don't care how many rescue squads they send to help Dick Nixon travel around the United States. I don't care if Cabot Lodge and Nelson Rockefeller and Barry Goldwater all prop him up and push him forward. And I don't care if they add Dewey, Landon, and Hoover to advise them how to win. The point of the matter is a team doesn't run for the presidency. One man runs for president, one man runs for vice president, and the country makes its decision. The President of the United States, Mr. Eisenhower, dragged him in twice, but they're not going to drag him in a third time.
They say, repudiate Eisenhower. And may I say, I am sick and tired of hearing my opponent run down the President of the United States and his administration. Oh, I know. After he hits him below the belt, he says, oh, I didn't do it. I didn't mean Eisenhower. I meant Nixon.
To show how desperate and despicable this campaign has become, they're handing outside defense plants a poster which says, Jack Kennedy is after your job. I'm after Mr. Eisenhower's job.
In that little boy manner he has, very innocent, he said, you know, if I'm elected president, I'll consult with President Eisenhower about how to stop this slump. He'll have a chance to consult with Eisenhower, but he'll be a senator of the United States and not president of the United States. That's for sure.
He tells us now that he's the man to stand up to Khrushchev, even though I can't persuade him to come into a studio and engage in the fifth debate and stand up to the American people.
I do not believe that we can afford to use the White House as a training school to give a man experience at the expense of the American people.
Now, if we can just send him back to California for 4 more years and study up, we're going to make a good public servant out of him.
He shows an ignorance economically which disqualifies him from even being considered as President of the United States.
The Vice President of the United States says that he will go to Eastern Europe if he wins this election. I will go to Washington, D.C.
While Nixon slugs it out with Kennedy, his vice presidential mate, Henry Cabot Lodge, makes headlines with an appeal for the Negro votes, critical in carrying big northern states.
My opinion is that there ought to be a Negro in the cabinet, and I'll go further. I'll make this prediction that if Nixon is elected, there will be a qualified Negro in the cabinet.
But Negro aspirations sputter over simpler demands. Martin Luther King, the Negro leader, is arrested in Atlanta at a restaurant sit-in, then sentenced to hard labor. Negro leaders fear for his life. Notified while campaigning, Kennedy recognizes a crisis. he decides to telephone directly to Mrs. King, promising support. Next day, the weight of Kennedy's opinion is felt in Georgia. King is released, safe on bail. As word spreads, Negro votes shift to Kennedy in the weeks before election. With 10 days to go, Nixon trails seriously in the public opinion polls. He joins the president at the White House for a final strategy session. They decide how to throw Eisenhower's personal magic into the campaign. Observers speculate about Ike's dramatic intervention. Can Ike transfer his popularity to another candidate? Can he tilt votes to Nixon by this last-minute effort?
My friend, there is no question in your minds. In fact, there seems to be only one individual who's bewailing America's strength and weakness, and he happens to be a political... The only one who's doing this kind of worrying is a political candidate, and he's not here tonight.
Eisenhower's impetus and the Blitz TV campaign helped close the gap. This is the climactic last weekend of the election, but Nixon feels he must fly to Alaska, though it has only 3 electoral votes, to keep his 50-state pledge.
This is the first time in the history of the United States that a candidate for the presidency of either party has visited all of the 50 states of this country.
I come to the Bronx as an old Bronx boy. I used to live in the Bronx. I agree it was the Riverdale end of the Bronx, but it was the Bronx.
No last-minute fling diverts Kennedy from the urban East, where the electoral votes are packed. From New York, he barnstorms through his native New England. In New Haven, he pauses to speak as a Harvard man to the Yale men. Then on he rolls through crowded industrial cities. The big jet sweeps Nixon back from Alaska on Monday, with only a day to go before election. In Detroit, a last street parade and a last speech as candidate.
I say to you, consider the qualifications of the 2 men running. Consider them from the standpoint only of America, forgetting all other considerations, and the decision that is made, I am confident tomorrow, will be one that will be best for America, it will be best for the world. It is this message with which I close my last speech as the Vice President of the United States. Thank you.
After 65,000 miles of travel, 150 major speeches, he ends with a 4-hour telethon in Detroit and a final TV appeal from Chicago. A night flight will carry him home to Los Angeles, and Richard M. Nixon's campaign will be over. At the Boston Gardens in the Old North End, where Paul Revere set out on the ride that began American history, John F. Kennedy speaks on election eve to his own Bostonians.
I'd like to have you meet my 2 sisters and sister-in-law. My sister, Patricia Lawford from California. And her husband, Peter Lawford. Sister Eunice Shriver from Illinois. And the wife of my brother Teddy, who's our Western manager. This is Joan Kennedy. This is the most responsible time in the life of any citizen of any free country. And I do not run for the office of the presidency after 14 years in the Congress with any expectation that it is an empty or an easy job. I run for the presidency of the United States because it is the center of action. And in a free society, the chief responsibility of the president is to set before the American people the unfinished public business of our country.
After the noise, silence. After the tumult of campaign, the hush of decision. No bands march on election day. No trumpets call Americans to the polls. Mostly they stand in line quietly, shuffling slowly to the 164,000 polls, where a penciled mark, a lever pulled, sums up heritage and impulse, hope, greed, and fear. Almost 1 million Americans have died in battle to defend this way of life. The weather on November 8th, 1960 was excellent. Good enough to invite 68 million citizens, more than ever voted freely at any other time or place in history, to answer the call of the candidates. At 9:30, the candidate lands at Hyannisport for the last rally, the last blare of sound, the end of 100,000 miles of adventure. Here, by the shores of the Atlantic, he can wait the day at home behind palisade and police. When he emerges again, he will come either as president or also ran, trophy in another man's career. By the shores of the other ocean, Richard Milhous Nixon is likewise seeking solitude. Ducking reporters and crowds, on Election Day, he slips across the border to Mexico. And while the nation ponders his fate, he lunches on tacos and enchiladas with Tijuana's mayor, Xicotencatl Aleman. And now begins the time of waiting. At Hyannisport, the National Guard Armory is converted to a press room where reporters relay what shreds of news the long day brings them from the Kennedy cottages. How the Kennedy brothers are playing touch football. How a nationwide telephone net has been established in Bobby Kennedy's home. From Nixon's press room in the Los Angeles Ambassador Hotel comes similar trivia, but no one yet has a clue to the vote. Normally, the suburbs and small towns vote early, and they usually vote Republican. The working men of the big cities and their families who vote Democratic do not vote until evening. So the first returns tonight, as always, indicate Republicans ahead.
Nixon leads by a shade in popular votes. He also holds an early lead in states with 173 of the 269 electoral votes needed to make a man president.
Now, as dusk falls over Hyannisport, the atmosphere at headquarters in Bobby Kennedy's cottage grows tense. All await Connecticut, the first major industrial state of the East Coast, to report. At 7 in the evening, Connecticut closes its polls. By 7:30, the report is in. A Kennedy smash victory.
With reporting at 8:12 Eastern Standard Time, the odds are 11-5 that John F. Kennedy will be elected president.
As other eastern states follow in a rising Kennedy tide, Eisenhower goes on TV to encourage Republicans in the far west, where polls are still open.
But an old war horse once smelling the smoke of battle, I just couldn't keep still. The only way that battles are won is keep them fighting right to the last minute. And they've got everything to fight for.
Kennedy's popular lead is now over 1 million and mounting rapidly. Kennedy seems to be well ahead in states with 343 electoral votes, more than enough to elect him if this early lead stands up.
Between 10 and 11, the Kennedy tide seems irresistible. But inside the cottage, the pros read returns differently. For now, as the Midwest and Rocky Mountain states show first tallies, Kennedy people detect the Nixon countertide rising. This will be no sweep. This is to be touch and go. Republican politicians see the trend changing too, and their chairman, Thruston Morton, points out,
and I was so happy to see that we were now 52 point something, and a few minutes ago we were 54 against us. So it's working out all right.
From midnight on, as the Kennedy lead shrinks, waiting becomes torment. Kennedy's electoral vote freezes at 265, 4 votes short of majority. Victory in any one of 4 states, Michigan, Minnesota, California, or Illinois, can give Kennedy the presidency. But at the Armory, minute after minute, hour after hour, the news and TV nets wait for decision on these hairbreadth races, and none comes. Instead, shortly after 3 in the morning East Coast time, midnight California time, the networks bring the country the picture of the vice president coming to speak from Los Angeles.
I am sure that many are listening here who are supporting Mr. Senator Kennedy. I know, too, that he probably is listening to this program. And while the...
as I look at the board here, while there are still some results still to come in, if the present trend continues, if Mr. Kennedy, Senator Kennedy, will be the next President of the United States. I want Senator Kennedy to know, and I want all of you to know, that certainly if this trend does continue and he does become our next president, that he will have my wholehearted support and yours too.
Stoically, hope fading, but not yet conceding, the vice president retires to wait the last close returns and the last reprieve from the dismissal of history. On the other side of the continent, at the Armory, Press Chief Salinger voices Kennedy's response to press and nation.
He left the senator just a few minutes ago as he was going to his house to go to bed. And he plans to get up around 9:15 tomorrow morning. The senator will have no statement to make until we hear further from the vice president. The question was whether the Secret Service has begun to protect the senator, and I said not that I know of.
From his Washington apartment, Chief of Secret Service Urbanus Baumann will have 2 telephone lines open to platoons of Secret Service agents at Hyannisport and Los Angeles. At 5:45, Michigan's 20 electoral votes go to Kennedy for a majority of 285, which elects. Baumann decides to move his Cape Cod platoon to guard the next president. The candidate still sleeps in the floodlit compound as 16 Secret Service agents infiltrate the grounds and throw their security ring around the man they must now protect with their lives. Though the margin is thin, by morning it is unmistakable. At noon, John Kennedy comes to the Armory to face his country as president-designate.
And I have sent to President Eisenhower the following wire. I am grateful for your wire and good wishes. I look forward to working with you in the near future. Vice President Nixon.
Kennedy also reads his exchange of wires with Vice President Nixon, then ends his press conference with this pledge.
And I can assure you that every degree of mind and spirit that I possess will be devoted to the long-range interests of the United States and to the cause of freedom around the world. So now my wife and I prepare for a new administration and for a new baby. Thank you.
Kennedy slowly leaves the veteran reporters who have followed him for thousands of miles. He accepts congratulations, offers greetings to those suddenly shy, but they and he know it is farewell. As president, he must walk alone. January 20th, 1961. After a night of deep snow, Inauguration Day. As custom requires, the old president accompanies the new president from the White House down Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol, where America's laws are made and where the oath of office is administered to presidents. In the rotunda gathers an escorting procession. Justices of the Supreme Court, the grand old man of the Democratic Party, other figures in the history of 1960. The outgoing administration takes its honorable place. So does the new vice president, and so do all the rest.
You, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear
that you will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
And will, to the best of your ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
And now there is the distance round him, the majesty that must surround the chief. Freely won, freely given. It has started somewhere with a handshake in the street, in the snows of the past. It ends on a handshake in the snow. So power passes.
We observe today not a victory of party, but a celebration of freedom, symbolizing an end as well as a beginning, signifying renewal as well as change. For I have sworn before you and Almighty God the same solemn oath our forebears prescribed nearly a century and 3/4 ago. The world is very different now, for man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life. And yet the same revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought are still at issue around the globe. The belief that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. We dare not forget today that we are the heirs of that first revolution. Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace, proud of our ancient heritage, and unwilling to witness or permit the slow undoing of those human rights to which this nation has always been committed and to which we are committed today at home and around the world. To those people in the huts and villages of half the globe struggling to break the bonds of mass misery, we pledge our best efforts to help them help themselves for whatever period is required, not because the communists may be doing it, not because we seek their votes, but because it is right. If a free society cannot help the many who are poor, it cannot save the few who are rich. To that World Assembly of Sovereign States, the United Nations, our last best hope, in an age where the instruments of war have far outpaced the instruments of peace, we renew our pledge of support to prevent it from becoming merely a forum for invective, to strengthen its shield of the new and the weak, and to enlarge the area in which its writ may run. Finally, to those nations who would make themselves our adversary, we offer not a pledge, but a request that both sides begin anew the quest for peace. Before the dark powers of destruction, unleashed by science, engulf all humanity in planned or accidental self-destruction. Let both sides, for the first time, formulate serious and precise proposals for the inspection and control of arms, and bring the absolute power to destroy other nations under the absolute control of all nations. Let both sides seek to invoke the wonders of science instead of its terrors. Together, let us explore the stars, conquer the deserts, eradicate disease, tap the ocean depths, and encourage the arts and commerce. Let both sides unite to heed in all corners of the earth the command of Isaiah to undo the heavy burdens
and let the oppressed go free. And if a beachhead of cooperation may push back the jungle of suspicion, let both sides join in creating a new endeavor, not a new balance of power, but a new world of law, where the strong are just and the weak secure and the peace preserved. All this will not be finished in the first 100 days, nor will it be finished in the first 1,000 days, nor in the life of this administration, nor even perhaps in our lifetime on this planet. But let us begin. In the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility. I welcome it. I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any other people or any other generation. The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. And the glow from that fire can truly light the world. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man. Finally, whether you are citizens of America or citizens of the world, ask of us here the same high standards of strength and sacrifice which we ask of you. With a good conscience, our only sure reward, with history the final judge of our deeds, let us go forth to lead the land we love, asking his blessing and his help, but knowing that here on earth, God's work must truly be our own.